Culbertson is a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, and shiatsu practitioner who also teaches meditation, mindfulness, qigong, and acu-yoga. She runs a private practice, Seaside Family Acupuncture in Marblehead, that specializes in fertility, prenatal and postpartum care, pediatrics, as well as chronic illness, pain, insomnia, anxiety, and depression. Zoe also works for some nonprofit hospitals providing acupuncture, bodywork, and meditation for low-income, high-needs elderly and patients in hospice programs. She's passionate about providing holistic healthcare to all ages. Her unique treatments all incorporate meditation to help restore balance and resiliency, releasing your body's innate capacity for healing. Zoe has been practicing meditation for over 20 years and is a certified teacher. Helping others establish a meditation practice that sticks and can be successfully integrated into busy lives has become one of her life's greatest works. She teaches meditation virtually, offering online programs, meditation retreats, and an ongoing weekly Seaside Meditation Circle. She's also a mother, artist, and linguist who has a love of nature, swimming, walking, cooking, and travel. Welcome to the podcast, Zoe. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here with you guys. Thanks for coming earlier in the morning than you might normally talk to people.
You are the person I want to see at 8:30 in the morning. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be the right energy to set the day.
Yeah, that's a nice thing.
It's funny, Amanda and I have had maybe like 5 interviews this week, and it kind of started off on Monday of super high energy, just like that go, go, go feeling. And I feel like as the week's gone on, it's gotten progressively calmer, and we're ending right where we need to in this kind of safe space of just living and feeling grounded. So this will be great. So let's get started by you kind of sharing your journey into acupuncture and oriental medicine, and how that came to be.
Yeah, sure. It's not a specific incident or any kind of amazing story like that, but I think as a kid, I always used to give people massages and put my hands on people and had this sort of vague notion that I wanted to do like therapeutic work with my hands. And that's really kind of again, like a vague notion that sort of led me to doing that. I lived overseas for 13 years in Australia and Japan. And before I had a background in languages, studied linguistics, opened a school, did a lot of teaching, translating, interpreting in Japan, those kinds of things. And then, I was moving from Japan back to Australia and wanted to do something different. It's like a good opportunity to do something different. So I thought, oh, maybe I'll like study massage or something like that, like do something more healing arts style than all the languages things I'd been doing. And so I was still living in Japan and thought, well, I'll start with shiatsu, because I'm here and I speak the language and I can learn, while I'm here. And so I loved shiatsu, which is like acupuncture. It's acupressure. It's where you're kind of using the same meridians, the same Chinese medicine theories, things like that. So my first exposure to it was living in Japan, more of a sort of one-on-one direct experience with someone who was teaching it in Tokyo. And then I went back to Australia and did a course there in shiatsu, and it really kind of transformed different aspects of my life. And it was like a super super meaningful, powerful, like learning environment. And then I moved to the Boston area, and shiatsu there wasn't a lot of familiarity here. It was a little bit different. And I wanted to kind of continue that training. So I ended up working with acupuncture. Is kind of like the same theories, the same strategies of treatment, and honing those skills a little bit. So yeah, and then as I was working in acupuncture, I began to do more and more meditation as part of my treatments. And that kind of led me into teaching meditation and mindfulness as well. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah, it's so cool. It's because I am a client of yours, and it's so interesting because I started going to you for acupuncture. And then as we started that journey, I've kind of joined in on all of your other ventures, and it's so cool to see how they all work together and they're all in unison. And we can definitely talk more about that. But in terms of acupuncture, it's so interesting. How exactly does it work? Could you give us the lowdown of how it works?
I can't actually.
I
I can give you a
It's
few.
sorcery.
I don't know. I can give you a few perspectives. It's a hard thing to study by most Western medicine models because, you know, the like ultimate form of evaluation in a medical construct is like the double blind study. And that's really kind of impossible to do with acupuncture. You can't have, it's really hard to have a control in all the studies. So there have been a lot of studies. They're all sort of partially flawed, though, a little bit because of that. And it's proven a bunch of different mechanisms. So there's not one agreed upon thing that acupuncture is doing. First of all, there, you know, from a Chinese medical standpoint, where we're looking at the energetics and we're balancing, you know, areas of energy that are in excess or deficiency and kind of trying to bring balance and bring smooth flowing chi, as we talk about the energy and blood throughout the body, you know, which is also increasing circulation. So from a Chinese medicine standpoint, we're really just sort of balancing out the energies. And from my shiatsu training, I look at specifically like where things are blocked or in excess, kind of accumulated and built up, or lacking and deficient and needing to be nourished and tonified. And then, but yeah, there's all kinds of theories and things that have been proven about the fact that acupuncture balances a lot of hormones and the neurotransmitters in terms of like reducing pain, circulating the blood. There's something called gate theory, which has to do with like the electrical impulses. I don't even remember that one, but there's actually a multitude of different mechanisms that have somewhat been proven. Lots and lots of studies on acupuncture, but there's not one agreed upon. It's not like some people think like, oh, acupuncture, it works on the nerves, right? Or, oh, it does this, but it's actually a little more multifactorial and like complicated than that. Yeah.
In that like same like notion, what are different like, what is the question I'm trying to ask? What different things can acupuncture help with? Like, I feel like, Caitlin, you went and got acupuncture when you were going through your like fertility journey, right? And I feel like until you had done that, I had never heard of that before, but so interesting. And I know people that go for, you know, managing anxiety, which I had also never, because you think just like physical, you know, so I feel like people would love to hear more about like, what ailments can it help?
Yeah, absolutely. So many ailments. Definitely, I work a lot with like women's health stuff. Like you mentioned, the fertility, that's one of my big specialties. And often that feeds into like, you know, prenatal and postpartum care through pregnancy. So all kinds of physical symptoms, as well as a lot of mental health stuff too. So, you know, with fertility, I like to do kind of consistent work for like 3 months, because when you're working with a hormone cycle or even the cycle of like a follicle, it takes about 3 months to kind of balance things out usually. And then sometimes I see people just a couple of times for like shoulder pain or low back pain or a lot of musculoskeletal issues. Then there's sometimes like ongoing, you know, chronic digestive issues, all sorts of like autoimmune disease, Crohn's, POTS, people I see for long COVID, actually. I'm just kind of running through, people come in for headaches and migraines, seizures. I'm just kind of going through. I should look at like seeing today.
No, I feel like that's just kind of helpful to hear, because I think with Western medicine, it can be very frustrating because you go to like a doctor and you expect them to be like, know every single
Have all the
thing,
answers,
which like no one is going to have all the answers, but I feel like it can be a very frustrating experience if you're just dealing with something and not getting any answers. Like there are other methods out there.
Yeah, yeah. And sleep, insomnia, especially I see a lot of people who've like tried all different, you know, specialists and doctors. And then, I have a couple people with trigeminal neuralgia right now, which is like, you know, a lot of pain through the face from one of the cranial nerves, and things that can be really hard to treat that might not have a way to treat. You know, neuropathy is another one where you might get numbness and tingling in the hands or feet, for all different reasons, like whether it's diabetes or a spine issue or damage from chemotherapy, they don't really have a treatment for that. There isn't really a medication or treatment for that, but sometimes it responds really well to acupuncture. So
Yeah.
yeah, all kinds of stuff.
It's always interesting
Cool.
going to see you because when we go to see you, you typically ask, what's going on. It's not just I'm going for my fertility treatment. We start off by saying like, how's your week going? What's your stress level at? And then she can kind of identify where to start and where to own in on. Even like, do you have allergies this week? Things like
Yeah.
that. And it's so interesting how your work really is so based on how you're feeling that day. So it's not like a typical doctor of just going for your specialist appointment,
Yeah.
which is so powerful.
Yeah. And as you might remember from the intake, if you have never had acupuncture before and you go for like a first appointment, we ask a lot of questions. And a lot of times there are questions people have never really considered, like all sorts of detailed information about like your menstrual flow and your bowel movements. And you might be like, but it's just my shoulder that hurts.
Mhm. Well, it's even like, what does your tongue look like? Like sometimes, like the weird things that you're like, what?
So interesting, but it's like all connected,
It
right?
It is.
Even
It's
just
all
like
connected.
physically, like I'm a personal trainer and it's like you see people that have an issue with their shoulder, but really it's like an issue with their ankle that just kind of traveled up the chain. And it like that kind of thing is so mind blowing, but like it's all connected.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Chinese medicine is fun because you might have one, what do we say? One pattern, various illnesses, or one illness, various patterns. Like we try to really look holistically and do a differential diagnosis, So someone who comes in with fertility issues, that can be due to all different kinds of things. So yeah, it's fun.
Excellent.
Cool.
So, I wanted to move into kind of your meditation. So I listened to a couple of your meditations because Zoe has a Facebook group and she posts frequently. And I was able to catch up on a few of them. And it's so interesting because meditation is something I want to be able to do so bad. I mean, I talk about with my therapist all the time. I'm like, I practice daily and it just is so challenging for me. But listening to your meditations, I wouldn't necessarily say I got into this state of like Zen. However, I did find so much peace in your words and the stories that you were sharing from like philosophers. Oh, here's my cat. And historians. So one meditation that I listened to was based on the theme that we're all good on the insides and the outside layer or forces kind of change our innate self.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are ways that we can get back to our core self? Like, how do we protect ourselves from outside influences that can make us like doubt or change who our good selves are?
Yeah, I think that was a recent one I did on sort of
Loved it.
gratitude and abundance and things like
Yes.
that in honor of the season right now and the fall harvest and stuff. Yeah, and that part of that story comes from a teacher, Tara Brock, who's got a great podcast and a wonderful meditation teacher based in DC, where she tells a great story about a big statue in Southeast Asia that was a big Buddha statue that they discovered underneath, a thick layer of plaster was actually a pure gold statue. So it's this beautiful metaphor that within is this sort of Buddha nature, this basic goodness, this gold part of ourselves that, in some ways it might seem like coping mechanisms or protection, right? We find all these kinds of maybe less beautiful plaster that we need to protect ourselves with. So when we're trying to get back to that basic goodness, it's a good question. I think it's always easy with meditation mindfulness to sort of start where you're at, to like cultivate an appreciation or a connection or a presence. I think a presence is really helpful with like where you're at right here, right now. So, I did I do a lot of teaching meditation, so I'm not sure which one you listen to.
It was that one. It was exactly what you're talking about. That
Well, I
statue.
also,
There was gold underneath.
yeah, I teach like 3 or 4 classes a week, so I'm not sure which one where I went after that practice, but but I often like really attending to that sort of everyday mindfulness, like really being present and taking the time to appreciate like the breath and the body, and sort of keeping it simple and keeping it like a way in. You need a way in, a way to be present, a way to connect to things. So sorry, my dog is also like wandering around over here.
It's constant over here,
always
so
happens.
Trying to
don't
trip
worry
with
about
all
it.
my wires. Yeah.
It always happens.
And like, what
Okay.
can that look like throughout your day? Like, can it be as simple as just like eating your breakfast and not also looking at your email at the same time, like taking a few minutes and like, or like
Single
stepping
tactic.
back and being like, oh, I'm on a walk and like, wow, the weather is so nice. And like, is it as simple as that?
Yeah, I think that cultivating that presence and that sort of more um, like everyday kind of mindfulness is like a really good starting point. You need to have a presence before you can make space to kind of allow that deeper basic goodness to come through.
Mhm.
And so sometimes we have to sort of intentionally cultivate it, and sort of there's lots of appreciation and savoring and kind of ways that you can gladden the mind to sort of, gratitude and all those kinds of things. But sometimes I really think it's just a more wholehearted presence. Like even that might also include mind. It doesn't have to be like always positive, right? I'm kind of um that gets sort of toxic quickly.
Yeah.
To be
I
always
love that
positive.
perspective. Speak more on that.
I
Be
always,
negative.
yeah, this time of year when there's like Thanksgiving and gratitude, I'm always like, I will teach gratitude practices only a couple times a year, and always with my little preamble that not everything needs to. It's very easy to go into like, oh, okay, think of three things you're grateful for, and then you're like, tick them off the list, and you're done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
And there's something called spiritual bypassing. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, where it's like with meditation and mindfulness, you sometimes find folks who go into it because they just want to get to the good place. They just want to be calm and like at peace already. They want to like have all their crap worked out.
For
I'm
sure.
gonna raise my hand for that one.
Yeah.
I don't want to do the hard work.
Yeah, I know you don't want to do the hard work, right? And I understand nobody really wants to do the hard work, but that's also where the gold is too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like deeper opening, that open-hearted presence to the whole thing, including like our resistance to sitting down and doing meditation, our desire to like avoid pain as well.
Yeah.
So
I think
yeah.
it's like also human nature too, but knowing that like you have to kind of get through the sticky stuff to like get to the better stuff is important.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for people that feel that resistance to sit down and do the meditation because they feel like they're bad at it or they don't do it? I'm quoting my fingers like right. I feel like that's a big thing too. It's like,
Oh yeah.
I sit there and then I fall asleep, or I sit there and I just can't get my to-do list out of my head. And I'm just sitting there, just writing a to-do list in my head and just ignoring the meditation I'm listening to.
Yeah. I actually teach a retreat once a year. That's the free virtual retreat. I just finished it in October, called the Path to Presence Retreat. And I'll run it again next October, probably. But the first day of the retreat, I cover what I think of as the myths of meditation. So a lot of times people have difficulty making a meditation practice consistent, making it stick, being able to show up every day or being able to continue it long term beyond a couple days or a week, because they might have unrealistic expectations about meditation, all those myths, which I can talk about a little bit, or they might have unrealistic expectations about themselves, and they might even have trouble with like self-compassion and overcoming any like limiting beliefs, and really kind of believing that you deserve the time and space and the benefits of meditation as like a self-care practice, like making adequate time and space, or being realistic and kind to yourself by not being like, I have to meditate 1 hour twice a day forever. Something that might not be realistic. Yeah.
Start with a couple minutes or something.
Yeah. So always like keeping it simple, starting where you're at, and cultivating a ton of self-compassion, the longer I've gone through teaching, the more valuable I find self-compassion in so many ways, including this kind of a thing. So there's a lot of myths about meditation, about like who can meditate, about how you meditate, about the results of meditation. My dog is literally like in my lap.
Oh, just
I
wants
love
the
it.
love.
Yeah.
Okay, so I also want to talk a little bit about you personally because I've known
Okay.
you for a couple years now, and I have this feeling about you that you just have such a beautiful perspective on life. You seem to balance it out well. Even when we got started with like our acupuncture holistic journey together, I always found it fascinating that I could have conversations with you about holistic medicine, but you were also very I don't want to use the word passionate, but I can't think of another one, I guess, educated on Western medicine. And I was involved with you throughout COVID, and you took COVID really seriously, and you came up with a lot of medical facts. And I always found it interesting that like you could balance both perspectives, because I had seen a lot of practitioners that if they were on the holistic realm, we were very like this is false, like COVID isn't real, this is all make believe. And I always found it really hard for me to have conversations that were just balanced, and with you it just came easily. So anyways, going back to this perspective on life, I just feel like you kind of have it not figured out, but you just have a deeper meaning to it. We have had some deep conversations, and you're kind of able to hold space for difficult life topics. So how did you get to a place of so much acceptance and wisdom? Do you think you were just kind of born like this, or is it an everyday thought process?
Oh, I don't know. Thank you for that. Those are kind words.
True. True.
Yeah, I know you mentioned you were like, oh, I want to ask you about that, but I don't know that I have a good answer for that. Um, yeah, I think I am someone who likes to consider a balance of different perspectives and wants to hear, like in terms of like the integration of sort of holistic alternative medicine and Western medicine. I mean, I also work like in the hospital system, so I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of like integration and working together and collaboration in general. So on some practical terms, like that's sort of generally how I approach things, I think, is like being more collaborative, wanting to hear other perspectives, things like that. But in terms of the deeper stuff, I don't know. I suppose
You think
I've
it's life experiences that you've had, whether,
I suppose I've gone through a lot of things, like um I had kind of like a more difficult younger childhood, grew up around lots of substance abuse and kind of a lot of exposure to different experiences at an early age, I would say, and traveled a bunch and had to kind of figure things out, like at a, all for 13 years living overseas at pretty young age as well. And went through like went through like a divorce, went through like my own big reckonings when I was on a fairly younger age. So I think that gives me some balance and perspective. And I think the meditation practice helps with that, really,
Yeah.
showing up every day, that um, staying connected, staying present, um, being willing to do some of that harder work, I guess.
And it sounds like you're just really accepting of all of these. They don't identify you. They're just part of your life, and you don't make them who you are.
Yeah. I mean, we can't control everything.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you feel like the
Right.
meditation helps you be, or helps people in general, like be less reactive? 'Cause I feel like that can be a huge thing where like that brings so much negativity into our day because it can just build and build. But if you don't have that muscle of like being able to just be like, it's fine, rather than like, I don't know, I feel like so many of us are in fight or flight mode all the time because we're on, social media and we have all the notifications on our phone and like we're just,
Yeah.
our brain is just like on overtime.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a quote I might butcher a little bit by Viktor Frankl, something about there being a space between stimulus and response, and that's really what you're training. And it's a training, it's a practice. I love that it's meditation practice. And I love even that my other work is like as a practitioner, like it's always a practice, it's always ongoing. And I mean, I am going to put another plug in for self-compassion. I feel like things can be hard. Like if you pause and really pay attention, you don't have to look hard for like, difficulty or challenges or suffering. And so I think like having a kinder relationship with my own self helps me have kinder relationships with like life as it's unfolding and other people and their struggles and challenges. That's probably like a big piece of my perspective, I would say. You know, how I like that we can't always control things. It doesn't really help often to judge things, all those kinds of things. And then sitting to practice, yeah, it's training in being responsible, having a response, being capable of responding as opposed to reacting in that sense, right? Like the true meaning of responsible is being capable of making a response and, having this sort of kind of awareness, but it's not just awareness and clarity, it's also sort of a compassion piece as well.
Love that.
I can talk on and on and on about all this stuff.
I love it. No, this is fabulous. So I was going to ask you about something you struggle with and how you cope with it, but I think that we've kind of talked a little bit about this, of just this self-compassion piece and acceptance. And
I can tell you a good answer though, because there's always something, right? Which is like, I do have my son is currently 9 years old, just turned 9, third grade. And he's been having a little bit of anxiety over the last year. And some of it might be developmental, who knows, could be a bunch of different things. But it's something that even though like this is a huge piece of my work, and like, I guess I want to kind of give you a glimpse of reality, which is like, I'm not always doing a great job at this myself.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Like, I find I love about my work that I get to kind of create a safe space for people to, for all everything that's going on, including the like mental health and emotional type stuff or spiritual stuff. But I find it challenging in my own life with parenting to simply like remember to be really empathetic and compassionate. When my son is anxious, I just want to like dismiss it or fix it or like, that's personally my current struggle.
It is. You always want to fix it, especially with your kid. Oh my gosh, it is such a challenge that I am coming to realize.
Yeah. And of course, each stage, there's like, it's like a level of complexity or something else you didn't quite expect, I'd say.
Yeah. Whew. Okay. So my last question before we jump into our last portion of this, if people want to get involved with any of the tools that you offer, but they're unable to do so because of like where they live, or maybe they don't have the financial resources, what are some free and easy tips that they could use?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a lot of virtual options for the acupuncture piece.
Yeah, everyone go get some needles. Just start jabbing.
Yeah. Although I take insurance. I know, right? I do take insurance, and a lot of people have network benefits. And check if you have benefits, and if you don't live nearby, like that's it it's not everyone knows that acupuncture is often covered by insurance. So that's one piece.
Good to know.
Yep.
And meditation, I do a lot of things for free and virtual as well. Like you mentioned that group, the Facebook group, Seaside Meditation. I go in every Monday and do a free meditation and have all my meditations logged, which I've been doing for several years. So there's a lot of different meditations in there. And I really recommend making use of like any local community. It's helpful to have that accountability and that motivation. So if you are farther away, there might be a local, and a lot of meditation things are free or low cost offering. And then there's a lot of great apps and resources. I mentioned that Tara Brach has a wonderful podcast. Jack Cornfield also has one called Heart Wisdom. And then there is Insight Timer is an app on your phone. There's a bunch of different apps. Insight Timer is one I like because you can set a nice timer to kind of help you to grow your practice.
Yeah.
Take some notes.
Fabulous.
Yeah, 10% happier. There's a lot of apps different people use. I haven't tried them all out, but make use of, like, we need those things. We need the community. We need all the reasons to show up. The retreat that I teach, take my free retreat, because I like talk about really working on it as a habit, and how to like set up good reminders and cues for your habits, how to think about why you're coming to meditate, like what personal benefits you're seeking, because everyone comes at it from their own perspective, their own desires, their own approach. And so I'm a big believer in like tailoring it to work for you. Thinking about like the timing of your meditate that kind of feeds back into those myths. Like, you don't have to meditate in the morning. You don't have to sit cross-legged on the floor. Like, you need to make it work for you. So big believer in tailoring it to work for you. And I'm going to do another kind of retreat. I haven't fully ironed it all out, but in January, when people are always like, new year, new you, getting their
Yes.
like, New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to offer something a little different this year. It's still kind of a baby in my mind.
I love it.
Yeah, like maybe, I'm not even sure. You should tell me what I should call it. Return to center, return to balance, something like that. Gonna have some mindful movement in there, some qigong and things like that. Qigong
I like that.
and meditation. So yeah, and it's really just about also, when you're showing up in a daily kind of way, keeping it small, keeping it simple, having a minimum baseline so that you're always showing up, even if that means taking 3 deep breaths. Right. And that's a compassionate way, because sometimes, like, you got to expect that life is going to get in the way. Things are going to happen. Things will be out of our control, and life happens. So we have to be able to kind of flow with it as well. So on the days when you don't feel well or there's a lot going on, sometimes the days we need our practice the most, but it's just really hard to show up, still having this very minimum sort of baseline commitment can be helpful, and letting your practice kind of grow with you. So sometimes you're able to kind of be more immersed in it. Sometimes you have to kind of let it be a little less, things like that. And I listen to a ton of podcasts. There's also another thing called Dharma Seed. It's a little bit more of a Buddhist perspective, like Buddhist Dharma, but it's also all free talks, tons of talks. I listen to those when I walk the dog.
I love that. So if people want to get in touch with you, where is the best way for them to do so?
Probably actually through my website, Seaside Family Acupuncture, and emailing me or reaching out that way. Or you can look in the Seaside Meditation group on Facebook, where I'm in there a lot. Yeah, so, or Zoe at seasidefamilyacupuncture.com is probably the best way. I'm not great with the phone, so written communication works better.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for this conversation. Let's end with a quick meditation if you are still open to it.
Definitely. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Just a quick little one.
Perfect. All we need.
Yeah. So just take a moment to settle. I always invite a lot of extra pausing. So even around meditation, I like to pause as I start a meditation and consider what my body needs today. Does it need to lie down? Does it need an extra pillow or a blanket? This is kind of like a little more of a compassionate approach to like really listening to what you need right now, right here, right now. So just kind of coming into a comfortable posture that sets you up to succeed in the practice. And you might close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. Or you can just let your gaze be soft. You don't even need to close your eyes in meditation. And just starting to tune in, starting to arrive. You might invite the body and mind to soften. Just scanning for any tension. Relaxing your eyes, your jaw. Letting your shoulders fall away from your ears, softening toward the earth. Maybe softening the belly, the hips. Just sit and know you're sitting. And as you shift your attention further inwards, becoming aware of your breath. Take your time. You might already have discovered the monkey mind wandering off. That's actually completely normal. The mind secretes thoughts like the mouth secretes salivas. It's the nature of our minds. And what's important is that when we wake up to the wandering mind, we soften, we pause, we just notice the wandering. And like training a puppy with compassion and kindness, gently guiding your mind back to the moment, becoming aware of the next breath. And just let your mind anchor for a moment in the flow of breath. Noticing the whole inhale and the whole exhale. Noticing the sensations in the body as the breath flows. Maybe you notice where in your body it's easiest to connect with that breath. And just let your attention wander and then rest where it's easy. Just coming back, letting the breath flow in and out, coming and going. And each inhale, you might feel a sense of spaciousness. Feel the breath creating a little space from within. Opening the spaces between ribs, around the heart. And each exhale, settling a little deeper. Sinking toward the earth. Feel the earth rising to meet you and supporting you. Just let it be simple, just attending to what's arising in this moment, right here, right now. Just this breath, just this body. And even the practice of waking up to the wandering mind and celebrating that moment of waking up and returning our attention, getting to know the breath again, maybe even noticing the pauses between the inhale and the exhale and the inhale. And really just letting yourself rest in the moment. And as the bell rings and you hear the meditation drawing to a close, pausing once more and noticing how you feel now, just with a few moments of sitting, what your presence is like, what your quality of the breath and your attention might be like now. And then continuing to listen to what the body needs, moving or opening your eyes, coming back to your day. Just a very brief little sort of basic presence meditation.
That was lovely. I love also that at the end, I open my eyes and me and Caitlin were doing the same thing, like stretching out our necks. So you can tell end of the week, holding tension.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh
That
my
was
gosh, that was
lovely.
so
Thank
lovely.
you.
Thank you
Yeah, you
so
don't
much
need a
for
lot to
being-
kind of feel a little bit of a shift, a greater presence, a little,
Yeah.
yeah.
Even just like more
Thank
energized
you.
from like breathing more deeply. Like I feel like we don't notice how shallow we breathe sometimes.
Right.
Oh my goodness. All
Okay.
right. Well, I know you have to run, so I appreciate your time and
Yeah, thank
we will be
you.
in touch. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, and nice to chat with you guys.
So great. Thanks so much. Have a great day and a great weekend.
Yeah. You too.
All right.
Bye.